Now, this one is for musicians who know their way around electrical devices and know how to manipulate electronic devices. If you find yourself in this group, then you may want to know more about the recording engineer or the audio engineer. Coming up. Hey, my name is Akurios and you're welcome to another episode of Music Business Monday. And today we're continuing the series on music industry career options, a series specially tailored for anyone who wants to understand more about the options that they have in the music industry in terms of making a living. Now, we've talked about the music producer. We had 2 installments about that particular career option, and the videos are available on this channel and you can go dig in and learn all that you want to know about the music producer. Now, today we're going to be talking about how to become a recording engineer or audio engineer and how to acquire the skills that are necessary in order to become a recording engineer. Now, at the end of this video, you're going to learn exactly what it takes to be a recording engineer, and you're going to learn ways that you can make a living or earn a living from being a recording engineer. So watch the video till the very end. And if this is the first time you're seeing me, if you're interested in sharpening your music business skills, if you're interested in becoming a better singer, or you're interested in, learning 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or a million tips and tricks on recording and music production, then go ahead and subscribe to this channel and tap the notification bell so that you're notified when there's new content from me. You are welcome to this edition of Music Business Monday. Now, just like I mentioned in the first video on this particular series, there are many musicians out there who have gone to school, who have studied something that relates to music. There are many who are in the music industry that do not know their way around, that don't know exactly what to do in order to start making a living or earning a living from this craft. The purpose of this series is to enlighten you and to open your eyes to the opportunities that are bound in the music industry so that it's not just about recording music or being an artist. There's so much out there that is available for you to grab and lay hold on in order to become a money-earning player in the music industry. And coming from a part of the world such as ours, the opportunities are endless because we have a virgin music industry that has so much untapped resources. And the purpose of this series is to reveal these things to us so that we can take advantage of them. Now let's head straight into the video and learn about the recording engineer, who is also known as the audio engineer. Now, the recording engineer is tasked with one responsibility, and his responsibility is to produce audio recordings for a larger music or film production project. Now, he may have been given this responsibility by a music producer or by, a record label or whoever, but his responsibility is to provide audio recordings either for a film project or a music, album project or a single project. So it could be drums, it could be vocals, it could be background vocals, it could be a horn section, it could be anything. But his task is to provide audio recordings of certain things that are part of the larger picture or a larger project. Now, this guy should not be mistaken for the music producer because he's not the one in charge of the entire production process. His responsibility is just one thing, and that is to provide audio recordings as part of the entire larger film or music production process. Now let's head straight into the skills that are required to become a recording engineer. Number 1, the recording engineer has to know how to use recording equipment or recording gear. Things like mixers, there's recording consoles, preamps, microphones, speakers, cables, what types of cables to use, equalizers, compressors, de-essers, delays, reverbs, all these things, and the knowledge regarding the use of these equipment have to be second nature to the recording engineer or the audio engineer. For now, we're just calling the recording engineer because of his task. His task is to produce or provide recorded audio for a project. All right, so he has to know how to use recorded equipment, and he has to be very vast in the knowledge of recording equipment. That's number 1. Number 2, he has to know how to use recording software. in 2020 and in the time that we are in right now, software play a large role in the production of audio content, in the production of audio recordings for a project. Even if he's not a music producer, he has to know how to use recording software in order to produce these recorded audio. Now, it could be Pro Tools, Logic, Cubase, whatever recording software he chooses or he or she chooses to use. It's entirely up to him or her. The important thing is to know how to use any of these recording software in order to produce these audio recordings and to produce them when needed. Number 3, the knowledge of the sonic characteristics or qualities of the objects that are being recorded. Now, it could be musical instruments, it could be vocals, it could be anything. Now, a recording engineer has to know the best way to record an acoustic guitar, has to know how an acoustic guitar would behave, how a particular type of electric guitar should be recorded, or the best way to record a particular type of electric guitar or a bass amp, the best way to record female vocals and male vocals, the use of the microphone, the placement of the microphones in drum recording. If it's a complex musical instrument like a drum set, the recording engineer is the best person to ask the way around recording things like that, because he or she is supposed to know the best microphone placement, configurations in order to get the best results possible. So the recording engineer must know the best ways to interact with recorded material, the best ways to capture the sound coming from the objects that we need recordings for. Because the whole idea of recording a particular object is to ensure that we are able to play it back, we are able to, use it for the production process. We're able to convert it into a marketable product, which is the job of the producer. So the music producer is going to demand that the recording engineer provides flawless and excellent audio recordings of whatever instruments or whatever, vocals are needed for that particular project. Number 4, the recording engineer has to have a solid knowledge of how sound behaves in a space, what we call acoustics or acoustic science. Now, the recording engineer doesn't have to be an acoustician or an expert professor of acoustics. The recording engineer just has to know the way these instruments or objects respond and behave in a space, in a particular room, so that we can know exactly what type of space we would be recording the acoustic guitar in, or the female vocal in, or the bass amp in, or perhaps the sound of a shoe, the sound of a shovel, if we're talking about film and Foley. But that's another topic entirely. Remember, the recording engineer is going to be hired for, jobs outside a music production project. Because if a movie producer or a filmmaker were to need some audio recordings for a particular film, a recording engineer will be tasked with the responsibility of providing those recordings. And it could be anything. It could be Foley, it could be, sound effects, it could be anything. So the recording engineer is responsible for this. So he has to know, or she has to know, exactly what type of space is going to be required to achieve what type of sound. Remember, the goal is to achieve the best possible sound quality. So the recording engineer is responsible for knowing every single thing about achieving this result. The recording engineer also has to have a solid knowledge of manipulating audio signals in the recording process, because remember, sometimes while recording we want to achieve a particular sound quality, a particular signal quality. So the use of equalizers and compressors, de-essers and even reverb and delay sometimes comes into play while we are still in the recording stage. So it's possible that the recording engineer will need to apply these tools, will need to manipulate the raw signal that is going into the signal chain at the recording stage. In terms of how to apply them to achieve a particular final sound is very important. So the recording engineer will need at some point or the other the equalizers or the compressors or the reverb or delay, and he or she has to know how to use them to achieve decent recordings. Also, the recording engineer has to have some understanding of musical arrangement and composition, because bands are going to come into the studio and the recording engineer is going to be tasked with the responsibility to capture the best possible recording, and that includes the performance, the musical performance from this band. If it's something that cannot be achieved at that point in time, the recording engineer should know, and the recording engineer should know how to go about, bringing out the very best during the recording session from the band, so that every single instrument, every single musician in the room gives their very best. And the recording engineer should be able to recognize this best. Because if it's not up to the quality that the music producer, for instance, is looking for, the recording engineer has not done his or her job. The job is to get the best possible recording quality and also to capture the best possible performance in terms of the music. The recording engineer also has to be a team player. Now, this is very important because you're going to work with different types of human beings. Now, this is very important because just like the music producer that is going to be dealing with all kinds of musicians and all kinds of artists, the recording engineer is tasked with the responsibility to capture recordings by most of the time human beings. And if you're working with human beings, if you're working with different people that have different backgrounds and different types of personalities and temperaments, it's important that you learn how to relate with them, how to work with them, and how to be positive about working with people in order to achieve a particular goal. Also, the recording engineer has to be very patient because working with musicians especially is something that requires a lot of patience. Read my lips, a lot of patience. If you're going to work with any kind of musician and if you're going to work with any kind of group, if you're trying to get someone to do something well, it requires patience. It requires a lot of encouragement. It requires a lot of, cheering up and drive, because you need people to be as positive as possible, because it's only, in most cases, in most human cases, it's only when there's positivity and there's, a very pleasant environment that people can actually bring out the best in them. So the recording engineer needs to be patient and positive. Also, the recording engineer has to have a drive for quality, has to be someone who has a passion for doing things well and ensuring that all the products that come out of him, all the audio recordings that he's able to produce and deliver to the music producer are top notch. Now, if it's someone who doesn't have an eye for what is good, if it's someone who has a mediocre background or a mediocre spirit, then such a person will not be able to even recognize good quality, not to talk of actually getting people to deliver it. So it's very important for the recording engineer to have a drive, a passion for quality, and the quality we're referring to is in the recording itself and also in the performance. So if this is a path that you want to follow, if this is something that you want to try out as someone with a musical background, if the recording engineer is a profession that appeals to you, then learn these things that I've just mentioned. Go out and acquire some musical training, learn some things about arrangement and composition so that your recording sessions with musicians and bands can be successful. Learn how to use recording equipment, learn how to use audio manipulation tools like equalizers, compressors, learn how to use mixers and mixing consoles, preamplifiers, and everything that is needed for the process of recording. Learn about microphones, different types of microphones, so that you can know how to apply what type of microphone on what type of instrument. Learn how to use instruments and learn the sound of instruments so that you can learn how best to capture this sound that is produced by these instruments. It's very important, and one of the best ways to do this is to hang around musicians, hang around music students, hang around people who are learning how to play instruments, who don't mind your presence around them while they're trying to play their instrument or while they're spending hours trying to perfect something, so that you can really learn the sound of the instrument without actually playing the instrument. Also, learn how to work with teams. It's important that you know how to work with people and cooperate with them in order to achieve a particular goal. because we are all different. We come from different backgrounds. We have different temperaments. We have different things going on in our minds. And every single person has to come together to achieve this. And the only way this is possible is if, first of all, you understand that the other man has a lot going on in his mind. The other man has a different background from yours and a different temperament. But you have to understand this and know how best to use what he or she brings to the table in order to achieve your goal, which is quality audio recordings. Also, be open to new technologies. This is 2020 and the world is becoming more and more advanced. So learn how to use new recording tools, learn how to use the technologies that are available to us and the technologies that are ever advancing. The NAMM convention just ended this weekend, and there's so much that recording engineers, music producers, and mix engineers, mastering engineers can take away from the convention. There's so much in terms of new recording equipment, in terms of new technologies in music production that have come out and that are staring us in the face in 2020. So open your mind to new technologies, open your mind to new tools and new possibilities of achieving your goals. Now, there are two things I would like us to note here. Number one, the recording engineer or audio engineer is a different job description from the music producer. Now, remember, the music producer is the one who oversees the entire, music production process in terms of converting a song idea into a musical product that is marketed and released into the public as a commodity. But the recording engineer has only one responsibility, which is to provide audio recordings for a particular project. It could be a film project, it could be a musical project. Now, that's his task. He's not governing the entire process. That's the job of the music producer. His responsibility is just to provide audio recordings. Secondly, the recording engineer or audio engineer does not have to be the mix engineer on the project, does not have to be the mastering engineer on the project. We'll talk about these two designations later on in this particular series. But this particular job description is different. And I just explained what he does, and I'm going to make it very clear when I talk about the mix engineer and the mastering engineer. All right, now down to the sweet one. Let's talk about how to make money. How does the recording engineer earn a living from his craft? Number one, live concerts or album live recordings. Now, this is when, of course, artists want to get together and produce a live recording of an album. Now, the recording engineer has one responsibility, which is to capture the performances and deliver the audio recordings that are performed or, that transpired on stage in that particular concert. An audio engineer hired for this particular purpose is paid for his services in the course of this concert. So the concert probably lasted a couple of hours, but before the concert actually began, a lot of things were put in place and a lot of things were set up in order to have a fantastic recording experience. Now, the recording engineer is going to play a different role from the live sound technician. The live sound technician is responsible for ensuring that the sound system works perfectly during this particular event. But the recording engineer is tasked with the responsibility of capturing the recordings from this event, the performances from this event, and then delivering it to the organizers or the artists or the band that have performed at this event. Number two, of course, studio sessions. Now, a music producer may task a recording engineer with the responsibility of, tracking some live band in the studio, or recording a guitar session or recording vocal session, and then he's paid for, or she is paid for, this particular service. Now, there's nothing wrong with you as a music producer getting someone else who knows and understands recording better than you to do your recordings for you. Now, there's nothing to be egotistical about this. There's nothing to be proud about this. If you know anyone as a music producer who can deliver and produce better quality recordings than you, then get such a person to do your recordings for you. This is where the recording engineer comes into action. Number 3, film, TV shows, and movies. We all know what these are. Now, it could be a soap opera, it could be a sitcom, it could be a full stretch movie, it could be a game show on television. Now, recording engineers are also needed in this particular field, and in this part of the world where we are, it's important that you realize that the market is available for you. This particular job description is in demand. It's important that movie makers or film producers actually look for qualified recording engineers to do this particular job for them. And the industry is looking for more and more professionals in the audio field who are going to deliver well in this particular area. So this is something that recording engineers or future recording engineers should go for. So go out there and look for TV, film, and movie opportunities that will get you behind the microphone to capture the best quality signals. Now, number 4, seminars and corporate events that need to be documented. Now, of course, if there's no need for documentation, if there's no need for the actual event to be recorded and, kept for, future purposes, then there's no need for a recording engineer. A live sound technician is more than enough for these events. But in cases where there's the need to actually capture the entire event and capture all the tiny, micro events that are happening within that event, then there's a need for the recording engineer to come into action. So in order to get top quality audio recordings from seminars and corporate events, I believe and actually advocate that a recording engineer is hired. Number 5, online recording services. Now, we live in a world that is completely digital. We live in a world that has opportunities for every single person to earn a living from the internet. And I'll just give you one example, and I'm going to talk deeply about this in the future, and that's Fiverr. Now, if you go to Fiverr, you can actually set up an account to offer a service in return for money. And you can do this as an audio engineer by actually offering audio recording services where you are able to, find a small space that you have access to and then record maybe drums and, have a drummer come in and record produce top quality audio recordings and then deliver to your clients on the internet who are based in different parts of the world. No matter where the person is based, you are able to provide these recordings. It could be background vocals, it could be acoustic guitars for, your clients in different parts of the world. Now, this is also an opportunity for recording engineers in whatever part of the world you may find yourself. So we've said quite a lot about the recording engineer. We've talked about who the recording engineer is. We've talked about who the recording engineer isn't. And we've also talked about how to become a recording engineer. The skills you need to possess in order to become a recording engineer. And we've also talked about several ways you can earn a living as a recording engineer. And I hope all this was helpful. If it was, like the video, drop a thumbs up right down there in that corner, and I'll be very glad that you did. And as we continue the series on music industry career options, don't be a stranger. And if you're actually a stranger, please subscribe to the channel, tap the notification bell so that you are notified when there's new content from this channel. And if you have any comments whatsoever, if there's anything you want to share with me, if there's any question that you have regarding the recording engineer or any part of this particular series on music industry career options, please go ahead and ask the question. And if you have anything to say that is positive that you want me to get back at you on, please drop the comment down below in the comment section and I'll be elated to get back to you. So till next time when we see again, I'm Akurios and I'm out.